Welcome, Tsitsi. We are just waiting for other students to come in on board. They will come soon.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome, Michael. Welcome in class. So we can start our lesson. Some other people can join us. Last time we've been talking about the valuation of assets, and we highlighted that we will need to be in a position to come up with a proper policy in valuing your assets. So as the cost and management accountant, you should be in a position to advise the management well how you can be in a position to come up with the policy of inventory and the policy of fixed assets that will be beneficial to your organization. The management might be looking at the issue of enhancing the statement of financial position for presenting to the incoming investors. So you should be in a position to come up with a policy that will be in a position to leave your balance is favorable on the statement of financial position. The balances that will be the current assets, referring to inventory, or the net book values of your fixed assets in the statement of financial position. So whichever policy which you need to be in a position to adopt, it has a bearing on the decision makers. It is the decision makers are the managers whom you then need to advise when presenting your information. So you can actually see that the other aspect of valuation, it has a bearing again on the income statement. On the income statement, if you can be in a position to choose an appropriate policy, it might give you favorable net income, but it has got a bearing on the tax matter. Oh, sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? So where did I last, when did you last hear me? So that I can be in a position to repeat. Michael, when did you last hear me so that I can be in a position to repeat? You can show by, okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, okay. So can you hear me now? So basically what I've been saying, for the job posting, it entails which amounts you are going to employ in order to produce a product. I've been saying that we need to recognize a scenario where we are going to purchase the raw materials from the supplier, place them in the warehouse, and when we place them in the warehouse, how then can we be in a position to distribute those raw materials to the production units? Remember, the production units, there will be different plans, but at a certain point in time, you might not be in a position to distribute all the raw materials. So you should be in a position to know the proportion of the raw materials you are going to employ when you are presented with a requisition. When you are presented with a requisition, that's when you can be in a position to take something from the warehouse in order to allocate to the production unit. So basically what I've been saying, I gave an illustration of the production of a mite marker. When you are producing a mite marker, you then need to have the raw materials, you need the labor that you are going to employ in order to produce that mite marker. Labor, we are categorizing it as direct labor. That is the labor that is directly employed in order to produce the mite marker. And then the indirect labor, you might see that those who are producing the mite marker may be superintended by the supervisors. So the supervisor is not directly in the control, is not directly linked to the production of the mite marker, but it's got a bearing again. You find that you might be in a position to have some overheads as well. That is electricity that will be used in the whole production unit, but you then need to allocate that electricity to the specified production. For instance, in our scenario, the production of the mite marker, you then need to allocate the appropriate electricity, because bear in mind that the whole electricity might be in a position, it might be the whole bill for that factory, but in that factory now, you are producing different products. So they need to allocate the appropriate proportion of electricity that will be to that mite marker. All the same, you might be in a position to have the consumables that will be directly linked to the mite marker. So all those aspects now, the direct materials, the direct labor, the direct, the indirect material, the indirect overhead, all those now, you then need to accumulate them in order to come up with the cost of production. And then by the end of the day, when you come up with the cost of production, you then need to add your markup in order to come up with the selling price. So basically, the management will then need to know the cost of producing that mite marker in order to realize a targeted profit when they put a markup, and then see how much they are going to sell in the marketplace. But remember, in the marketplace, they might be having some other players who will be producing those mite markers. So as the cost of management accountant, they need to consult with the marketers how much is the mite marker being sold in the marketplace. Are we going to enjoy a good market share if we can be in a position to place our mite marker on a prescribed margin so that we can be in a position to satisfy the aspirations of management. So it is the hallmark of the cost and management accountant to be in a position to advise the managers which markup they can be in a position to put in order to have your market share. So basically, the cost and management accountant, you are not only looking at the production unit, but you are also looking on the whole scenario for ultimate decision for the manager. Okay, so basically I've been saying we'll be looking at the definition of job order costing. I've been saying job order costing is a costing method which is used to determine the cost of manufacturing each product. So you can just see that you might be having a vast array of products in a production unit, but you are mainly concerned with the costing of a specified product. And then this costing method is usually adopted when the manufacturer produces a variety of products which are different from one another and needs to calculate the cost of doing an individual job. So in one scenario, if we are manufacturing stationary items, you might be in a position to see that we might be manufacturing some art files, we might be manufacturing some mite markers, we might be manufacturing ballpoints, we might be manufacturing a vast array of stationary items. But then if we are looking at now at the manufacturing of the mite marker, we then need to look on what entails to produce the mite marker. So that is what is being illustrated by this statement, that costing method is usually adopted when the manufacturer produces a variety of products which are different from one another and needs to calculate the cost of doing an individual job. So you can actually see now, you are in picture that yes, you might be having a variety of products, but you then need to specifically cost a particular job. So job order costing includes direct labor, direct materials, and manufacturing overhead for that particular job. So as I highlighted earlier on, you then need to take into account the direct labor, how many hours you are going to employ in producing the mite marker, direct materials, which materials are going to compose the production of the mite marker, and the manufacturing overhead. Obviously, I've been highlighting that you might need some rentals, you might need to be in a position to look on the electricity. So those are the overheads which you should be in a position to allocate in order to come up with the cost of production of the mite marker. So in job costing, we need to reckon the flow of costs, how the costs are going to flow from the warehouse up to the point of sale. We need to be in a position to come up with the flow chart of how the costing and the costs are going to flow. I've got an illustration here. We've got Jailing Manufacturing in Masasa. They just received a new job for 2 custom bikes that are identical. The team has met and they have made their materials list. Purchasing has created a materials requisition form, and they are bringing in the components needed to build the bike. So you can actually see that we are having a real scenario now. We need to manufacture, to assemble the bike, and you have been given an order. So when you have been given an order now, the team now, it is going to request the material which is in the warehouse in order to assemble the bike. So they are going to come up with their requisition form, which includes all the materials they need to require in order to produce, in order to assemble the bike. So the accounting has created also a job cost sheet that will follow the bike through from production to delivery. So the cost sheet that can be in a position to be compiled is basically the cost of labor that is going to be employed, the electricity that is going to be used, and all sorts of the components of cost that are going to come up in order to come up with the cost of production. So the flow of costs will look like this. So on bullet point 5.1, you can actually see the flow of costs in job order costing. We have got the production costs. Are we together on bullet point 5.1? Can you show by raising your hands or by the chart on bullet 5.1, the flow of costs in job order costing? Can you show by raising your hand or on the charts? Nasha, thank you. I can see you have indicated your hand. How about others? Yes, I thank you, Michael. I can see you have indicated. How about others? Are we together? Are we together? Because you need to comprehend this diagram well, because you might be surprised if you don't comprehend this diagram well. Because job order costing, that's where the hallmark of costing lies now. That's where the hallmark of costing lies. Okay, so I can proceed. So you can actually see that in order to manufacture a product, you then need raw materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads. So those components now, they will then fit into the statement of financial position being work in progress inventory, that is goods completed, cost of goods manufactured, and then raw materials inventory, they will come in as the inventory within the statement of financial position. And we've got the finished goods inventory now. When you have your finished goods, they will then be in a position to go to the income statement for the cost of goods sold in order to come up with your gross profit. That's when you can be in a position to come up with your markup. You can see the period cost now, which is the selling and distribution cost, which might have been raised by the accounting department so that they can be in a position to add on to the cost of production in order to come up with the cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold plus the selling and distribution expenses, that will be the total cost you are going to incur in order to bring your goods on the sellable position. So if you employ now the selling price, that's when you can be in a position to come up with the your margin, which is the profit. So basically, you need to appreciate the flow of this job order costing. Anyone with a question on the flow chart of job order costing before we proceed? Anyone who has got a question on the flow chart before we proceed? Anyone who has got a question on the flow chart before we proceed? So, Tsitsi, could you be in a position to tell me the components which we need to reckon, the cost components which we need to reckon in order to produce a product? The cost components which we need to reckon in order to produce a product, could you give it a try, Tsitsi? Anyone who can give it a try? Anyone who can give it a try? The cost components which we should be in a position to reckon in order for our products to be on the sellable market. Are we on the same page? I can't see anyone responding. I can't see anyone responding. Are we on the same page?
Hello, sir.
Michael?
The question was saying the cost components.
Yes, the components which we should be in a position to reckon in order to come up with our cost of production.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'm not quite sure with direct and indirect. All right. Maybe I think with direct and indirect cost of production.
Okay.
Then this direct and indirect are broken down into, like, the direct are broken down into direct labor,
Yes.
raw materials. In the indirect, we have costs such as lighting and heating, we have electricity, we have rent, which can be allocated in different using different methods, such as the floor area occupied by a certain type of a product, or maybe the profits that it yields to a company.
Thank you, Michael. That's quite right. So you can actually see, that in order to come up with your production cost, you then need to reckon the direct materials, the direct labor, and the manufacturing overheads. So the manufacturing overheads, you are looking at the scenarios of electricity or some rentals which you are paying. Those are the manufacturing overheads you might be in a position to incur, or the supervisors' salaries, that is manufacturing overhead as well, because the supervisors' salaries, they are not directly linked to the production of that product which I've highlighted earlier on, the night marker. Because the supervision in that production line, it might be looking on the production of night marker, it might be looking on the production of Agliver files, it might be looking on the production of ever sharp pens. That's the whole production unit for stationery. So you then need to allocate now the supervisory proportion of that production unit for particularly for the night markers. So that's how we will then see how we can be in a position to allocate the manufacturing overhead. So have we appreciated the diagram? Have we appreciated the flow of the costs in relating to the job order costing? Have we appreciated the flow of costs? We are saying we have come up from the raw materials, labor has been employed, manufacturing overhead has been employed in order to bring them to work in process inventory. So when we bring them into work in process inventory, that's when we can be in a position to have our finished inventory. When you have the finished inventory, then they will then be in a position to be transferred to the income statement as cost of goods. When we add on the selling and distribution expenses, that's when we can be in a position to come up with the total cost for our products to be on the sellable position. When we bring those costs now, if we add our markup, we will then be in a position to come up with the selling price of our product. So that's how we can be in a position to trace our costs in line with job So you can actually see that the material requisition form is prepared with the items from the bill of materials, all items needed for the job, quantities and costs that will go into the job. These are direct materials from the flow, from the cost flow diagram. So you can actually see that when there's a requisition that has been prepared, maybe you need to manufacture 100 mite markers. You then need to specify the actual material which you need to utilize, the actual quantities, and the actual labor which you need to employ in order to come up with a production of 100 mite markers. So you might be in a position to employ semi-skilled labor, maybe 7 people, and then you then need to add up the supervision. You might need to have 2 supervisors. So those are the issues which you need to reckon when preparing your material requisition. So I've got an illustration of the material requisition for that department which needs to assemble the bikes. We have got, they need some spokes which are 24 in quantity, and then unit cost $1, that will then cost $24. And then we've got the wheels, they need 4 wheels at a cost of $25, then it will total to $100. They need frames, 2 frames at a cost of $110 per unit, that will be $220. They need some screws and bolts in quantity 16 at a cost of $1, that will be $16. So you can actually see that this material requisition form now will then be in a position to highlight to the actual quantities and the amounts that are needed in order to be to produce what they intend to do in line with the job number 2912. So the job number 2912 in the production department, they have raised a material requisition that they need all these quantities and the unit cost in order to come up with the assembling of these bikes to a total figure of $360. So you can actually see how we can be in a position to prepare a material requisition form. Can you actually see how you can be in a position to come up with a materials requisition form? Pride, are we together? Welcome, Pride. And Nyasha, are we together on this motion?
Yeah, we are together, see. We are together.
Thank you, Pride. So when we get this material requisition form now, we then need to proceed on how we are going to journalize. We then need to proceed on how we are going to journalize as we will be producing our products, in the production department. So you can actually see that the first step which you need to take note, you need to have the materials requisition form prepared so that you can be in a position to know the quantities and the total amount that might entail in order to assemble the bikes. Then stage number 2 now, you then need to set up the job costing sheet. You then need to set up the job costing sheet. This is where the numbers really start to come together. The job cost sheet includes a variety of information. Measure your direct labor costs. Remember that any labor not directly tracked to the manufacturing of a given item is included in your overhead. So what I've highlighted earlier on, the instance of the supervisors, they are not directly linked to the manufacture of directly linked to the assembly of our bikes, in line with the requisition which we have been finished with the stores department. The requisition, it comes from the production. We are the ones who are going to allocate those resources now. So you need to differentiate these departments. You have received the requisition from the production department as they would want to assemble the bikes. Then the stores department now, it is the one that issues the materials. So we are now on step number 2, setting up the job costing sheet. And then it says add the manufacturing overhead that you already calculated. So you need to have a predetermined calculations that the manufacturing overhead component that is going to be utilized in order to come up with the assembling of bikes that will tell how much. Then you then be in a position to come up with your total costs that will be set. And the paper trail through the production process is helpful to track all expenses in one place. This can be provided to the accounting department, who can then properly allocate all the costs to a job. So you can actually see that when you have drawn your cost sheet, you then need to present to the accounts department. They will then be in a position to cost the job properly. That's the function of the accounting department now. So we are done with step number 2. We will then need to prepare the journals now. How we are going to allocate our materials, the journals now we need to have a paper trail. Because if you don't journalize, you might be in a position to lose track of what is happening within the warehouse, going to the production unit, up to the point of selling the product. So we need to recognize the journals that will be involved in order to come up with the selling price, in order to come up with the production cost, in order to incorporate all the various components that will be added in order to come up with the cost of production. So we now need to look on the journal entries. On these journal entries, you might be given a scenario of how you can be in a position to present the journal entries in an exam setup. So you should be in a position to know which account am I going to affect and which account am I going to credit. Because the basic bookkeeping knowledge, it is you need to debit the account that is receiving, and you need to credit the account that is giving. So if you are given a scenario that the warehouse is the one that is giving to the production department, you can actually say that the production department is the one that is receiving. They need to debit that department, and the warehouse that is giving now, you then need to credit the warehouse. But we are going to look on the names now of the accounts that will be involved. So I've got a scenario here. The journal entries to move direct materials, direct labor and overhead into work in process. So you can actually see that when you are moving the direct materials, the direct labor and overhead, they will then fall into the production department. In that production department now, there is an account that is known as work in process. That's where you are going to place all your costs of production in the work in process. Because work in process, we are saying you are in the process of producing the product, you haven't a finished product yet. That's why, in essence, you are referring that account as a work in process account. Are we together on that aspect? We are saying that when you are moving materials from the warehouse to the production unit, you then need to credit the materials, and you are going to debit the work in process account because it is the one that is receiving the materials from the warehouse. And all the same, the direct labor, you are going to credit the wages payable and be in a position to place the direct labor into the work in process account. So you can actually see that the direct the wages payable account is the one that is going to be credited and debit the work in process account in order to account the labor that is going to be utilized in producing your 100 mite markers. Are we together? But in the aspect of the overhead now, you can actually see that the overhead now, it is pertaining to the whole production unit. We now want to see how we are going to treat the overheads in order to reach them to the appropriate production of the mite markers, because we need to reckon that maybe electricity was utilized a bill of electricity was presented from ZESA at 5,000 US. But the 5,000 US is not the amount which you are going to employ in order to come up with the total cost of production of the 100 mite markers. We then need to allocate the actual proportion of the electricity that was pertaining to the production of 100 mite markers. Are we together on that aspect? Are we together on that aspect? Are we together on that aspect? Nyasha, are we online? Are we on the same page, Nyasha? Thank you. I can see your comment. Thank you.